magic of editing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Zen Perry Project. Today on the show we have Cameron Lavi-Jones, frontman of the grunge band King Youngblood. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. What's good?
Absolutely. We're good. We're hanging out. We've been kicking off a bunch of podcasts, getting ready for me to be busy with a bunch of stuff soon. So thanks for fitting this in the schedule. We were really excited to have you on the show because you were recommended to us by a fan of our show, and he's an absolute fan of you. So shout out to you, Sam. I know he's gonna be
Oh,
listening.
shout
Um,
out Sam. Big love. Appreciate that.
yeah, he loves your guys' stuff, and I can see why. You do so much, and I we'll get into this. We have an idea. We're gonna break into this, but for
Sure.
anybody out there listening, why don't you kind of describe what you do and what your band means to you? Because it feels bigger than a band to me, and
Thank
people will
you.
start to understand that as we get through this interview. But why don't you describe what you do, how you started the band, where you guys play, how it started?
Yeah, for sure. Well, man, King Youngblood, it's been a project coming up on almost, Jesus, I think it's about to be like year 13 or something like that. I had a chance to start really young. I just turned 25 in the tail end of December last month. And for me, I I came up on world music. Both my parents were musicians, and they were on tour in this 20-piece Native American jazz, rock, and blues infused band called the Songcatchers. And their whole MO was showcasing and supporting indigenous voices with contemporary music. So like they have a song like called Getaway Car that's about like a res jalopy, and it's literally like an 80s pop banger. And they did all different sorts of kind of music, from world music to pop to spoken word in that group. And it was a band of 20 people from all different walks of life. My family is not indigenous, but it put me on so much to being able to see the intersection of art and activism, of what happens when people get on the same page about something and try to make a difference and connect through making that difference. Then when I got to middle school, I started getting real angsty. I really got into, especially System of a Down was really big. And in a similar way, it was pointed music with, it was very political, very, very message forward, but also very abrasive. For me, I'm Black and Jewish, and I'm an only child, and all of that creates a concoction for a lot of urgency to connect with others and to be understood. It creates a lot of isolation in a lot of different ways, be it connecting with different people culturally or just being seen, period. And music for me has always been the process of taking emotions that are negative or I don't understand or just honestly processing, and through the process of songwriting kind of reclaim a lot of the power that can be difficult to see and to maintain through going through difficult times. So that's why I really got into especially a lot heavier music. But also a big part of it too was I noticed there weren't really a lot of people that looked like me, at least not in Seattle, making the kind of music that I was really into. I didn't see Black people playing heavy music until maybe like tail end, middle of high school. And it was like I've been very, trust me, I've been very into music for a long time. And so it was a big thing where I recognized that I have to be the change that I want to see. And I think that definitely segues into what you were saying about King Youngblood being bigger than a band, because our whole ethos and philosophy, and this is why we do so much outside of just making music, but our whole ethos and philosophy is to be unapologetic in the space that we take up. We're three out of the four of us are people of color, and especially in the genre of music that we make, we all have an understanding of what it feels like not to belong. So that's why when we're on stage or where we're making anything, studio stage, whatever, it's the one true place where we get to be ourselves. And so can I swear on the show?
Please.
It's the one place, thank you so much, that I'm liberated now. It's the one place where we get to fucking be ourselves. And I think that unapologetic reclamation of power, ask for forgiveness, not permission, when it comes to us being authentic with our art, is what's allowed us to translate into different places and connect with different folks on different levels. Because our whole MO is showing folks that we're here, we've always been here, but even more so that we're gonna have a real good time while we do it too.
Yeah. It's not all yeah, you're just part of the party. That's the idea. Keeping it going and making this work. Yeah, you guys are taking up the proper amount of space and in the proper, I mean, just doing what you gotta do. You guys fucking rock. And I love seeing your guys'
Thank you,
videos,
man.
and it's yeah, it is truly inspiring. Just one musician to another. You guys are really doing it. So let's talk about like kind of what outside of the band. I want to go kind of macro, micro, and then macro with this.
Love it.
So what else do you talk a lot about? Basically, trying to understand yourself, and you have a foundation. And I thought this was really cool. Hold Your Crown Foundation. Can you kind of
Yeah,
see how that dovetails into the band and how that worked?
absolutely. Yeah. So, King Youngblood, we have a 501c3 nonprofit under the Allied Owls Foundation called Hold Your Crown. It's centered around dismantling youth mental health stigmas. We originally got the idea from doing like a rock the vote style kind of tour in 2018. Um, we rented a flatbed truck and put our PA on it and uh, partner. I think we went to, it was either 12 or 11 different high schools and colleges during the 2018 local election season. And we were able to get 3,200 young folks registered to vote just by pulling up, throwing shows. And we partnered with the League of Women Voters, Washington Bus, along with a lot of other folks, where basically we would have a voter registration booth right next to the stage where we were performing. And just, it was one of those moments of really trying to showcase like it was really proof of concept for being able to see that like pulling up with authenticity is the gateway to getting people to activate. And that was really big for us. So after we had finished doing that run, one of the things that has always been very huge in the King Youngblood camp, talking about, but also like navigating, has been mental health. And it comes up in our music. We have a song called Cry to My Cadillac. We just released a music video for it. But the whole ethos of the song is finding joy after literally like, and honestly poking fun at the story of me crashing my car from having a panic attack. And through the process, like I was saying earlier, the process of songwriting and sharing, it became something that like people sing back to us at shows, and there's joy and there's life to it. But I digress. Getting back to Hold Your Crown. So for me, when I was coming up in high school, especially, I really noticed and felt that there was a big discrepancy between how I would interact and talk with my friends about mental health versus how school administration would do it. Um, I know it's all too common of a story where high schools will bring in some old white dude or like some fucker with like a BMX bike and be like, "Don't kill yourself." And that would solve all the problems of mental illness in the entire school. And wow, you did it, guys. I feel so much better. And just seeing the discrepancy between like that and the very real, heavy, deep conversations that I would have with my friends while we're all kind of like processing and trying to find our way through it together. Um, and it really put me on to recognizing that in order to touch people, especially on sensitive issues like mental health and mental health advocacy, you have to speak their language. You have to meet people where they're at, and you will always hear and believe somebody that has that shared experience, somebody that looks like you, sounds like you, has walked in your shoes to some degree or another. You believe their words of support because you know that they've been through what you've been through or are going through. And with that kind of notion in mind, we formed Hold Your Crown. I centered it around peer-to-peer conversations. Still using music as kind of a gateway to get people to open up by sharing the stories behind songs, especially ones that are related to mental health, but more specifically, holding space for big conversations and tough ones, not from a perspective of like, all right now, like da da da, but more from an education basis of like, hey, like this is a very real thing, and if this is something that you're experiencing or going through, regardless of the degree or of severity of it, um, it's reminding people that there are resources, that there are options. It's reminding people that they have things that they can try and different places to be able to reach out to for support, that it's okay to ask for help, and most importantly, that they're not alone.
It's really cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what's it kind of look like for the foundation now? So you work with individual people and people who are writing music. What's it kind of like a day-to-day thing there, or is it what is the day-to-day thing there?
Yeah. So I mean, like, I will be fully transparent that having a full-time music career on top of a mental health nonprofit, as well as all the various things I know we're going to get into this conversation, there is a certain level of like navigating bandwidth that's always a part of figuring things out. But for what we do as far as our actual like kind of focus is it's very event focused. The last event that we ran was we partnered with the City of Seattle's Parks and Rec Department, and again with the Allied Arts Foundation, to host this thing called In Touch Festival, where we threw this concert at Volunteer Park in Capitol Hill, and assembled this panel of, I think it was like maybe 15 different people of all different walks of life, age ranges, ethnicities, religions, cultures, sexuality, gender orientations, all of it. It was wild. We had a 12-year-old and an 80-year-old on the same panel talking about their mental health journeys. And we to give you kind of an idea of at least the big picture of what Hold Your Crown does, we threw a concert where for the intermission, basically, of the concert, we had a very real, in-depth, real talk about mental health and sharing the different ways and pathways that people have navigated their mental health, be it very authentic connection with solid therapists, exploring if their process for figuring out what meds are right or not right for them, as well as like getting really, really deep about what things work in our medical system to support people with mental illness and what things really don't. And then after that, we threw another show, and it was one of those things where it was using music to bridge the gap and remind people that connecting on these things, in especially in the context of trying to destigmatize mental health, connecting on these things is something that we can celebrate because we all have a connection to it in some way. We all navigate our mental health in some particular way. And that's kind of the MO of what we do. We try to be really event focused, so that way we're focusing on the impact that we can make in those moments. But the minute we get some more infrastructure and some more support with everything like this, I think that's when it'll become a little bit less event focused and more of that actual day to day working kind of aspect. But when we're not doing events and stuff like that, we're doing a lot of thinking about like, and honestly, a lot of conversations about like, okay, what things are folks experiencing right now? What aspects can we help with? What aspects are still really dealing with a lot of stigma, and what ways can we utilize music to be able to support in that? I think it's a very big and important conversation to have, and especially with young folks, it's a critical thing to talk about early. I think that there's a lot of complications with mental health and mental illness that could be nipped in the bud very early if folks knew that they had support and that it was okay to talk about these things before something big really happened. And that's why we really try to focus on the youth.
That's great. And I mean, you're using your platform to like elevate these things that are so important to you. I kind of want to go back to what you were talking about, "Cried in My Cadillac," because I mean, it's you kind of mentioned it in a playful, almost like funny way, but I mean, how as much as you feel like talking about it, what was that moment that led you to I guess crashing your car, which I don't think I've really said this to anybody or on the show, but I had when I lived in LA, I had a very similar thing happen where I was like freaking out. I was not doing very well there, and I was driving my Jeep, and I was just not paying attention. Totally hit somebody, not a person. Like I hit another car. Nobody was hurt or anything like that. It was fine.
Mhm.
Uh, but yeah, very very similar thing. It's really hard to navigate the world when you are experiencing some like serious downs. So, why don't you talk a little
Yeah.
bit about that song and I guess how your music gets you through and maybe helps your mental health or any and all thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you. Well, my first thought is, man, I'm glad you're okay. I'm glad that you one survived because that's a terrifying thing. Not just to experience, but to also experience on top of what you're experiencing with your mental health. And I just wanted to say I'm really glad you're still here.
Well, yeah, I appreciate that. It was a big wake up call for me in general, and to, it caused me to reach out, which because I knew I did have support, and it is easy to forget that people do care about you, you know.
Love to hear it, man. But yeah, I cried in my Cadillac. So, um, I during the time period at the very least, um, I was in college and I was in kind of the throes of a very messy and difficult breakup. And it was one of those things where it was like I was driving and I was doing my very best to just focus and just hold on while I was already having kind of a pretty tough mental health day. But I pulled up to a red light and I saw my ex in the car next to me, and I had a full meltdown where it was like my fight or flight kicked in, and I I peeled off into a one way when I totally shouldn't have, and I veered off and I crashed into a telephone pole. And after all the stuff with the car and making sure that I was like all in one piece and everything like that, I had a lot of time really to reflect on why I had the response that I did have and how what I was experiencing in that moment impacted me to the degree that it did, that it caused me to not just crash my car, but like almost really, really seriously injure myself and other people too. And so for me, it was in a very similar way. It was a wake up call of recognizing the depth of what I was feeling. I think that I like to think that I'm somebody that is self-aware to a certain degree, and it is always something really big when you get a moment to actually look with hindsight about like, fuck, I this is outside of my tax bracket. This is outside of what I have the capacity to handle or deal with on my own. And I've been to therapy before and everything like that, so it wasn't like it was a strain or something for me to get into. But I come from a brown household where it was the first time I recognized that like, hey, I need help and that I really needed to go to therapy. It was a really tough conversation to have with my folks, but eventually, kind of through talking through them about what I was dealing with and going through, it's like they recognized that what was most important was me still being here. What was most important was me getting help. And yeah, but to kind of connect it to the reclamation within all of that, I mean, I can send it to you guys, but the cover art for Cry to My Cadillac, because we released it as a single, the cover art is me is a photo from the car accident. Like it's my car slammed into the telephone pole. And that song, especially, after we wrote it and continued to share it, it became something where like I was saying before, folks would sing back to us. We cut our teeth in the University of Washington underground house show music scene, And so for us, when we'd perform that song, we'd break everything down. We'd have the crowd sing the chorus back with us before we, all right, your turn, da da da. But it was something that was so powerful and so resonant, not just for me, but I think for others to be able to lock into of that reality of navigating your mental health requires that work, and navigating what happens when you don't have that proper support, or when you don't give yourself that proper support. It became something that we were able to connect with people over, and in that shared experience. So much so to the point of like when we finally released our album Big Thank, when we were recording Cry to My Cadillac, we were still playing shows at the same time. It was a lot on our plate, but there was a house show that we played, and it was just absolutely ridiculously packed. But somebody had sent me a video of the bridge of that song, of folks singing it with us, and it was such a powerful full circle moment for me, because this moment in time when I was just completely devastated. I was truly in mental lows, so much so to the point that I was having physical responses to what I was dealing with in the form of crashing my car, and having this full circle moment of like, it just, fuck man, it was healing. And it just hit me in such a way where we decided to sample it and put it on the album, where we literally turn off everything that was like recorded, and just dropped in the audio from that video clip. And it felt like it really encapsulated the work and relationship that I try to have with my mental health, of it being something that through songwriting I'm able to talk about, through songwriting I'm able to process and be honest and vulnerable, and to have that vulnerability and honesty resonate with so many people. It it not only makes me feel validated in what I'm experiencing, but it makes me recognize how meaningful and important it is for that vulnerability to be a bridge of connection with other people. Because if folks didn't align with it in that way, I don't think they'd be singing it nearly as loud as they are at these shows.
No.
So I'm very grateful that in that way, being vulnerable has been able to be proof of concept for other people, that being vulnerable and honest and authentic about these things is a pathway to their own healing or connection, or just having a moment of joy in those shows in and of itself too.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it goes without saying, but so glad you're okay. Uh, we have the picture of the car, and yeah, you got some good damage on there, and
Yes, I did. Yeah. I
uh,
remember I remember when AAA pulled up, and they were like, "Do you want us to take this somewhere?" And I was like, "I don't fucking know. I don't I don't know. I don't know.
you're like, I'm not driving it, that's for
I'm
sure.
not driving it. Like, I got it off to the side of the road, but I don't think this one's making it back to the shop."
No, but yeah, so glad you're okay. Also, for such a what a lot of people would see as a very traumatic thing in their lives, I'm sure to some extent you probably definitely do. Um, it's a very catchy song,
Thank
and
you.
people are loving it, and obviously singing it back to you. It's a classic sing along song, sing along rock
Thank
and
you.
roll song. So
Yeah. I
and
still don't know, honestly, just like to nerd out as a musician for a second. I still don't know how I got away with that song sometimes, because when I was first writing it, I remember I saw this one clip. It was like 3 a.m. or something on my phone, of like the first time I had finally come up with that riff. And I remember sending it to the group chat with the band and being like, "Hey, like, what do you guys think of this?" And everybody in the group chat was like, "What fucking time signature is this, dude? Like, it's not 4/4. If it's 6/8, it's got the weirdest turnaround I've ever seen. And you want folks to be singing to it like this?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay, let's try it."
hell yeah. I actually that's one thing on a quick side note. You do have a lot of awesome stops and a really cool way of taking up a small amount of space to make that gives this like feeling of odd time signatures. But it basically just like you're putting an exclamation point within your songs in interesting areas to accentuate new sections. I think you guys do
Thank
that
you.
extremely well. Uh,
Thank you, man. Yeah, I feel like quite honestly, I feel like it's a philosophy I've kind of picked up from a lot of work that my day job is I'm an audio engineer at a studio called Studio Sage in Edmonds, and a good majority of the clients that I work with over there are hip hop artists, and a lot of them, at least when I get a chance to like properly mix and edit their shit, it's like I'm always looking at what aspects can I chop this beat up in order for it to just serve the vocal, serve the lyrics. And it's why I think we have, I mean, like stylistically, we have a lot of times where it's like we'll cut a section and then only come back on the two. We'll have a lot of sections where we'll be like, yeah, just throw like two extra measures in it. Let's just see what happens if we throw two extra measures in it. Just, different forms of tension and release. But I definitely think that the more that I've been writing and the more that I look back on what we've already shared with the world, I'm like, okay, there's some stylistic threads of continuity there, and it's very validating to hear you point them out, man. Thank you.
it's a very unique thing that you guys do so well, and it doesn't seem superfluous. Like it, you guys are doing it for a reason. It works so well in all your songs.
Thank you,
Um,
man.
yeah, absolutely. I kind of want one other thing I wanted to touch on, kind of going back to your childhood. I read on your Spotify bio that your dad was part of the Black Panthers. Uh,
Yeah.
and I knew a little bit about Black Panthers, just from, obviously I didn't know as much as I should. But I went kind of on the deep dive on Wikipedia and I was just reading for like an hour. Holy shit.
Mhm.
What sort of stories, how did growing up in this, you know, I mean, you're son of your parents and all the work that they did in their music. What was it like growing up with them? What sort of stories did they have from back in those days? Because it was a different time completely.
Yeah. Well, for me, I appreciate that question a lot. For me, I growing up, I would have a lot of real talks with my dad where he would reflect with me about how things might be different, but they haven't changed in some of the most important ways that they need to. I remember when I was I remember when I was younger and when Trayvon Martin was murdered, I remember my folks and we sat down and we had a very, very serious conversation about um, what had just happened, but especially in context of how it relates to me. My both of my parents are very no bullshit, and I appreciate that a lot because it's been a very helpful litmus test and compass for me in a lot of different avenues. But if there's anything they're in particularly no bullshit about, it's my safety. And when we had that conversation, I just remember, you know, he had said, I know it's not fair, but we need to talk about this because this has to do with you being able to come home. And that comes first. I can't really get into specifics, at least about my dad's story, because that isn't fully for me to tell. But what I can say is that his time as a Black Panther and the things that he's shared with me have been incredibly integral for me understanding that my skin tone, my culture, and the person that I am is always going to be something that, at least in this country, is always going to be something that precedes who I am. It's always going to be something where the perception of me is what people gravitate towards before who I am as a person. And it has been a very it's been a very long line of very serious and important, not just conversations, but contemplations of asking, especially like overlaying on top of that too. It's like I'm mixed, I'm lighter skinned, and there's its own series of invalidation that comes with that within my community and outside of my community of not being seen as quote black enough. but yet still taking on all of the marginalizations that come with being a member of my community. And, my parents really did a great job of raising me and reinforcing that I'm not half black and half Jewish. I'm black and Jewish, that they aren't things that dilute. It's not divisions of a person, it's aspects that make up a person. So much so to the point of like my family, we have a tradition that is unlike any other family that I've ever seen, but our Passover Seder, my mom took point on this, but worked with my dad on it. For Passover, for those of you that aren't super hip to the holiday, we have this book that's basically kind of like the Passover guidebook for like how the Seder runs, called a Haggadah. And the Haggadah that my family has interweaves the story of the Jewish world experience with the Black world experience. We start our Passover Seder with the I Have a Dream speech. We parallel the stories of the Jews escaping slavery in Egypt, the Exodus story, with Harriet Tubman leading slaves from the Underground Railroad out of slavery. And paralleling those two stories and paralleling how similar those tales, and not just tales, but experiences are, was incredibly powerful for reaffirming who I am as a person, both as a Jew, as a Black person, but especially as a mixed person as well. My dad specifically has always given me a lot of positive reminders and reinforcement, and when I need it, brutal honesty about what it is to have the Black experience in this country, and simultaneously has given me the tools to recognize the power that I hold, the power of the platform that I have, and the power to recognize the full scope of all those different aspects intersecting. When it comes to protecting and riding for your identity, there is a great deal of misunderstanding, a great deal of unseenness that will come from that. But if there's anything that my folks have been able to give me, especially my dad, it's been that reaffirmation that regardless of how people may misunderstand me, knowing myself will always be the key to being able to move the way that I need to, and in turn connect with my community and support my community in the ways that best serve everybody involved.
Wow. I definitely want to touch on that last point you just said there. Like knowing yourself is like probably one of the best first steps. I almost kind of liken that to put your oxygen mask on first.
Precisely. Was just going to use the same analogy.
Yeah, and that's what sort of things do you do? Is music your kind of way of trying to get to know yourself better in a context?
It absolutely. For me, it's like music has always been the process of both doing that self work and also connecting community wise. We co-founded this music festival with another band's frontman called Down North, and the frontman's name is Anthony Briscoe. They're like a soul punk band. And we had just connected because we were playing this music festival over in Orcas Island. We recognized that we were the only Black folks on the bill. And it was one of those moments where it was like we were really seeing like, it seems to be that there is still some of those core issues that I was experiencing even from middle school to now. Like it seems to be something that's still reoccurring, especially in those heavier genres. It's no secret that rock music is very white dominated, so much so to the point that at least when I was coming up, there was this big kind of notion that it was like white people music. But a lot of the self-work that I've done, and honestly, a lot of the like community connection that I've been able to have and experience and tap in on, when Anthony and I had that conversation and really recognized, we talked about what we wish to see and try to make happen. And we originally talked about like really wanting to see like, trying to make a pitch for Afropunk coming out to Seattle. And, we had reached out, but they were, they hit us back with an email that was like very kind, but it was basically like, hey, like, thank you so much for reaching out. And like, we really hear what you're talking about. But TLDR is like, we'd like to bring this out there, but we don't really know if there's like a Black community out there that would ride with it like that. And so it was a really big kind of moment of recognizing, all right, this isn't just like a Seattle issue. This is a larger national thing where there's a whole community of Black musicians in the Pacific Northwest that aren't just being overlooked, but literally like not even getting a chance to be in the conversation in a lot of different ways. And so we founded this music festival called Black and Loud Fest. We threw the very first one 2 years ago. I believe it was in September. It was still warm out, at least in Seattle. No shout out global warming, but it was still warm out. We did an outdoor music festival at this spot in Seattle called LTD Bar and Grill. They'd been hosting these weekly, basically kind of mini block parties called Fremont Fridays. And it was super cool, very DIY. But we wanted to come in and really do something very fucking proper. We were able to tap in with a ton of different community sponsors, and linked in with a title sponsor being Jack Daniels. And they really saw what we were trying to accomplish and do for not just the Black community, but truthfully for the music community in Seattle, of creating, at least the way that I describe Black and Loud Festival is, it's a celebration of Black fronted bands that everybody is invited to. There's so much of its own hurdles that I'd be happy to get into, of like folks misunderstanding what Black and Loud Fest is about, or like anytime you try to curate space to hold space for a marginalized group, there is always going to be the like, well, what about da da da? Like, you're excluding da 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 from it, and it's never been from an exclusionary basis. It's been quite the opposite of like, this is a group that has been excluded, and we're including everybody to celebrate them. But we threw the very first one at LTD Bar and Grill, and we threw it for free, and it was massive. It was all with local acts, King Youngblood, Down North, Black Ends, Jaden Grayson performed, Paige Turner, all these different folks that were, Black music, specifically Black Seattle musicians that just had real heat behind them. We wanted to make sure that we were grabbing folks specifically that were coming from alternative realms. So like the MO, at least that we run, is like any genre is welcomed, but you gotta be playing some instruments or something, like no track shows. Like at the very least, you gotta have a drummer or something like that. And especially really trying to put on for the Black musical community in Seattle, but especially the alternative Black music community in Seattle. But it was such a success that Jack Daniels signed on to do it again for the year after. And last year, again, in September, we brought it over to the historic Seattle venue, the Crocodile. We took over 3 stages. It expanded way further beyond what it was the first year. And we actually had a budget to fly in bands. We had some folks from Toronto, one of my favorite bands, the OBGMs, Nick West, who had done a bunch of recording with Larry Graham, April and Vista from Washington, D.C., Pleasure Venom from Austin, Texas, and still putting on for the local Seattle community with folks like Maya Marie, Nobi and the Force, Tiffany Wilson. We had a spoken word poetry stage and an acoustic stage, as well as the full loud shebang. And it was one of the most proudest moments, I think, in my career so far, was standing at the finale of Black and Loud Fest on the Crocodile main stage. And I'm sure you can see it in the videos or pictures somewhere. in the archives, but there's just this one moment where I'm standing on stage and I got beside myself and really started welling up because I was seeing so many black folks in the audience. I was seeing a full house built on connecting and being a part of that celebration. I was seeing people from all different walks of life simply there enjoying the music and being a part of a positive purpose. And, you know, it just really hit me because that's the shit that I wish I had when I was first coming up. That's what I really wish I had as a young black creative, is being able to see that there is a community of other people, that I wasn't just in an ocean of a white dominated genre. And it just it's one of my proudest achievements so far, and I'm very grateful that we're expanding it now. We're actually taking it to Portland on April 6th at the Bossa Nova Ballroom, and it'll be our first Black and Loud Fest outside of Seattle. And so, you know, we're making the impacts that I feel like the ethos of King Youngblood really is, we're trying to make the impacts that we wish we had when we started. And it feels really great to be able to kind of combine the things that I've learned from a personal angle about my own identity and combine that with music in a way where we're able to make a difference. It means a lot to me.
That is really cool. You just gave me chills. That must be such a huge moment, and the fact that you were able to put that on and get other people rallied around you. I have a few people that I definitely want to send your name over to, that would probably they should definitely somehow help you out. And I would
Please, man,
love to help
please.
out any way we can from the other side of the country, but
That's all love, man. It means the world. As soon as I saw it was Eastern Standard Time, I was like, all right, I need to do a little math. If it's 7:30 there, it's 4:30 here. Okay, got it.
we did it. And also, you always have a place to stay with you and your band. We have quite a lot of space down here, so if you ever want to play
Oh,
some New York City,
thank you, man. No, especially once we get out to the East Coast, man. Trust that we more than likely will be taking you up on that. On our last tour, when we were in San Francisco, we slept at a friend's place who was in a studio apartment, and we were like, it looked like we were in like a catacomb or something, where we all had our sleeping bags and we're like head to toe, all four of us, in front of the sink and covering like the back door to the garage. It was one of those things where it was just like, I'm very glad that there's still the supporting other people on the road, and especially musician to musicians. Same thing goes, man. If you find yourself in Seattle, we got a guest room for a reason.
appreciate that, love that. And I feel like I could talk to you about all this, everything that you do forever. But I think I have some big questions that a lot of people listening probably have. How the hell?
Please.
What does your week look like? Because we haven't even got into your freaking comic book EP, like Afro Thunder. We haven't. Okay, yeah, you run, or you're part of a studio. Okay.
This is the
Yeah.
most exciting part of the interview, was seeing your calendar right there.
Thank you so much. I got a whiteboard for Hanukkah and it has been put to very good use. Nah, man. I mean, like, there's no way for me to say this without it sounding as ridiculous as it is. I'm very fucking sleep deprived. Like, I think for the past 2 weeks, I have been falling asleep at probably 4 a.m., maybe 5 a.m., and waking up around like 10:30, 11 a.m. But, um, yeah, there's a lot on the plate, with this band, leading this band, and being the predominant songwriter of this band. We're going into our next album, and like a lot of this, especially with Hold Your Crown and Black and Loud Fest and managing distribution and releasing music videos, and we're doing all of this ourselves. We're independent, and so it is it is a mountain. It is a mountain, and there's no point in trying to deny how insane the workload is. But still, at the same core, I think it's why we've intersected so much of our purpose and our passion with it, because it gives us yeah, I mean, for me at the very least, it gives me the drive to do the very difficult moments where it's like, I don't know, the last big show that we had, we played this really really big venue in Seattle called the Showbox for New Year's Eve, and it was this big party. It was one of the biggest shows we've ever played, and for it, we wanted to bring this string quartet that I had put together with some friends, and I did all of the like rehearsing and all of the charting, and I was up till 5 a.m. the day before the show, just making sure all the charts were printed, everything was, you know, marked up properly for the string players, and had to take meetings for distribution, like getting the next stuff set up for the next set of songs that we're releasing, scheduled and planned out the minute that I woke up while I was loading gear for the show. Like there is so much that goes on to making something like this work, and I am fueled, if not by sleep, I am fueled by recognizing that it is a part of what I feel like is my purpose. It's a part of what gives me connection with other people. It's a part of what allows me to not just do my art, but to express my authentic self. And truthfully, it's like as difficult as it is some days, I feel like I've been doing this at least long enough to the point of like I don't know, like I'm looking at my to-do list right now, like in this call, and I'm looking at it knowing that all of these like empty checkmark boxes, I'm doing it knowing that when I check something off here, sure, it might be something as small as like make the bands in town announcement for the next show that we have, you know, like invite people to the show Saturday, like do the work. I look at it and I recognize that each aspect of this is paying my dues. Each aspect of this is getting me one step closer to the day where I do have the support, and it's building the skill set for me to be able to recognize that, you know, when we do have that more helpful infrastructure to bring on people to help, I will be familiar enough with what aspects they would be helping with to be able to discern what folks are like, oh yeah, you're locked the fuck in, and what folks are on some bullshit. And yes, there are times where I'm definitely overwhelmed, but I look at all of this as both paying my dues as well as building that larger skill set that can only help me better understand the career that I'm pursuing as I pursue it. You know, I think that, like, I don't know, like I think about it in the same way of like, you know, when you see an artist that like goes viral and they're not like an actual, like, they've been grinding on this shit for like 10, 15 years, and then they have something that blows up and they're ready for that opportunity. But like somebody that was like kind of went viral kind of on a whim and then continues to kind of have this pressure to follow up with it. The reason why you see those folks fumble is because they weren't prepared for what got thrown at them. It wasn't that the opportunity was wrong or something like that. They just weren't ready to run with it the way that they needed to, because they hadn't had experience with being prepared for those opportunities in the first place. I look at the mountain of work that I have and I recognize that it is all a part of preparing me for what I'm trying to accomplish. And if there's anything at the very least, it's feeling resolved. Excuse me. If anything, it is knowing that my resolve is wanting to be ready for that opportunity. And so taking care of this list, however it changes day to day, is what gets me to that point. It's worth it.
What is your goal?
My big goal is to be what I wish I had coming up. You know, there is always something so powerful and impactful for me when we have shows. And I remember we played this music festival in Seattle called Fisherman's Village in Everett. And Everett is in like northern, I mean, it's not like, you know, close to the Canadian border, but it's northern Washington, at least comparatively to where Seattle is. And I just remember we'd played the show, and there was this group of kids sitting, I think it was like in a subway or some shit, while we were walking after the show and like walking back to our van. We were just on the street. And I remember seeing like this kid in the window, and he looks over and he double takes, and then he fucking stands up and runs out of the subway, and he comes over and he's like, "Hey, like, I just wanted to say, like, I've never seen us do that before." And he was this little black kid, so I knew exactly what he meant. And the reason why I do this, and the reason why I want to share and spread this as big as it can possibly go, my big goal is to be at that Foo Fighters level of connecting with folks. But the reason why I want to get to that point is to be a case example of what happens when Black creatives dial into their authenticity, and to be that proof to other young Black and brown kids, just other young folks, period, that we can do this, that it is possible, that just because we don't see ourselves in particular roles or realms or whatever it is, doesn't mean those aren't spaces for us to occupy. My big goal is to be the proof for other folks to be as hungry as I've been with trying to get to where they're supposed to be.
I mean, absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's a lofty goal to put on yourself. I'm sure it's hard to I mean, I feel that for me that would feel like a lot of pressure, but it seems like so important that I mean you're making it your life, and you're just honing
Yeah.
yourself every single way you possibly can.
I feel like personally, it's like I've never really looked at it as pressure. I've looked at it more as an opportunity to. I've never looked at it as pressure. I've always looked at it as an opportunity to impact lives in positive ways. And be it small, just from having a good time at a show, to big, to being able to have that representation larger. I only stand to gain when good people do well. And to be a part of that, and to try to give back in the ways that I can, is how I ended up having this passion in the first place. It doesn't feel like pressure, it feels like purpose.
I mean, your passion is honestly like infectious. I know me and Michael here you're very inspiring, and you have a lot
Thank you,
of
man.
wise things to say. This is
It's the trauma dog. I just have time to think about it. That's all.
no, you don't.
Real shit. Okay, you got me there. Fuck. Ooh.
That's awesome. I mean, okay. I have a few more questions for you, but I cannot wait
As
to
many
follow
as you
up.
like, man. I'm on no time constraint. I'm enjoying this conversation thoroughly.
Great. Where did the name for the band come from?
King Youngblood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like I probably should have started with that, but I
No. It's a good. It's like there's the lore is complicated.
right?
I get it. Growing up, especially on my dad's side of the family, Youngblood is a term of endearment, especially that Black elders use with younger folks, be it like their actual blood relative family or just little cousins, whatever it is. Youngblood is a very common term of endearment for somebody, from an elder to a younger person. And it's something that I was grown up being called by my family and things like that. And the king part came in from really recognizing what I wanted to try to accomplish with my musical purpose, being leading the charge on a generation of folks that wanted to operate within that authenticity. And putting the two together felt like, honestly, it just kind of clicked, where it was like my role is I want to help guide people and lead people towards their authentic selves, and lead by example within that. And I think that guiding those next generations means we have to focus on sharing the perspective of young folks, of sharing the perspective of folks that have had the benefit of learning from the mistakes of older generations and still has the fire in their belly and drive to navigate how to solve those problems that may still be prevalent today. So I don't know, just made sense. King Youngblood.
There you go. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I like to ask everybody this question, and I think you've touched on it throughout this episode, but what do you do to deal with imposter syndrome or feeling like you're not stacking up enough towards your goals, or you start comparing yourself to other people, other musicians, other artists? How do you get through that? And what's something that you keep in mind during those times?
For sure. Well, first and foremost, my therapist is very paid. Like, girl, so glad you're here. But aside from just having a solid self foundation, at least I don't know. Whenever I get questions like this, I always try to avoid giving fucking esoteric answers. I hate when people are like, "Hey, like, how do you deal with this very real, very common problem?" And folks give responses like, "You just have to remember, everyone has to run to their own mountains." What the fuck are you talking about, dog? Like, so I'm going to give some very tangible responses back to that question because it's a very important question. The way that I deal with imposter syndrome is I zoom out for a second. I connect with different friends or fans or people that I trust to keep it real with me about what I'm doing and whether or not it resonates. And I ask for either reality or reassurance. I make sure that I'm prepared for what their answers are, so that way when I receive it, I can take it for what it is, which is supposed to be a guiding light. It's supposed to be letting you know if you're on par with what you're trying to do or if you need to make changes. But in no way is it any indication that you should stop. I mean, like, unless you're making some real hateful shit, but like, that's not what we do over here. But for me, combating imposter syndrome also comes with, honestly, this is a great example for this. I have a journal in my phone that I use for everything. But one of the things that I have in this journal is I used to just start it for like when I really needed to get things out, but I started putting basically like mantras in. Like when I have moments of like positive clarity to remind myself of things, I will write it down in the journal and then go back to it when I have moments where I'm feeling musically insecure or feeling imposter syndrome or something like that. Especially after we released Big Thank, I was experiencing a great deal of imposter syndrome, so much so that it started kind of putting me into writer's block, where I would literally like sit down and try to write, and I just couldn't shake the idea of like, fuck, what if this doesn't resonate with people the way that the first record does? But I'd written this mantra that I find myself coming back to whenever I experience that imposter syndrome. I'd really love to share if that's okay.
Please do.
Let me find it real quick. My journal is so full. Here we go. For me, at least personally, when I'm experiencing imposter syndrome, it typically comes from the idea of like good enough. But I've written this mantra. I am a good person. I am a good person, and I know I am a good person because I am trying to be a good person. I know I am a good person because I have good intentions. I know I am a good person because I communicate to the best of my ability. I know I am a good person because I try to do good where I can. I may be misunderstood by others, but their misunderstanding does not mean that I am not able to understand myself. I may have moments where I feel insecure about being good or being good enough, but it is no indication of what the truth is. I may be in the process of navigating changes or changing myself, but change is required to grow. Challenges are a part of change. Understanding is a part of change. And taking in new pieces of information is a part of change as well. And the process in which I change will become the process in which I grow because I know, and repeat, I am a good person.
Wow.
So just having like tangible aspects like that, because I think that when, especially as artists, like we're really predisposed to be in our own heads. And sometimes that isn't always the most conducive place for being connected in reality. So I think for me, at the very least, zooming out and touching base with other people outside of my head is really helpful for making sure that I'm staying on the path, because ultimately that's what's most important. It's not even being good enough or being an imposter. It's, are you still feeling connected to the path that you're on? And if you are, or you just need that reaffirmation that you are still on that path, sometimes it's hard for you to see, and that's okay. So connect with somebody else and touch base of like, hey, like, this is how I'm feeling. Are you seeing this too? And other times it's simply just taking the moment to think, what is this feeling trying to infer to me? What is feeling this imposter syndrome trying to tell me? Not dictate my actions, but what is it trying to tell me? You know, a big thing I've really drawn from therapy, especially, has been like emotions, especially like air quotes, negative emotions, are simply our headspace is trying to give us a heads up about something. If it's anxiety, if it's sadness, if it's anger, or whatever, it's not ever really just us experiencing those raw emotions. It's those emotions come from a particular place, and taking the time to step back and think about where those emotions and experiences come from, and then overlay that with like, okay, but is that actually what's going on? Is that actually reflective of my reality? Answering those questions is critical. And then on top of that, just to do the final one step further, it's recognizing like, hey, like, from what this is trying to infer to me, is this something that is trying to bring me closer to what I'm trying to accomplish or further away? If it's something trying to bring you further away, it means it's probably not actually rooted in reality. But if it's something that's trying to bring you closer to it, it's a piece of information to build on, because it's trying to maybe tell you like, all right, well, if you're beating your head trying to do the same thing over and over again and it's not working, it doesn't mean that you're not supposed to do it. It means you're supposed to try a different way to do it. I think that's always been really helpful for me, of just taking that time to zoom out, whether that be internally or getting external support. But just remembering that your purpose is what comes first. It's what's most important. And so if you're having those moments of imposter syndrome, taking the time to dial into that question of, okay, is the way I'm feeling in line with what I'm trying to accomplish, or is it trying to prevent me from what I'm trying to accomplish? Because doing, at least like my whole ethos, I'm pretty sure this is a Kamasi Washington quote, but my whole ethos is be stubborn in your goals, but flexible in how you get there. And when you experience imposter syndrome, it's your brain trying to remind you, either properly or improperly, of the importance of holding on to that flexibility.
Damn.
Hope that helps.
That very much does help.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but this question popped into my head, and this could go nowhere. But would you consider yourself happy?
Can I take a moment to think about my answer?
Please do, and
Yeah, we can always edit it.
no.
I think that question is complicated. I think, at least for right now, the stage of healing that I've very much so been in has been doing a lot of the big, difficult work of, just to get personal and vulnerable for a moment. Like a big lesson for me, especially this year, has been seeing how my identities and my experiences has created a lot of isolation for me. And that isolation and almost chronic loneliness creates an environment where sometimes it can be difficult to operate within my best interests. Sometimes it can be difficult for me to either communicate or self-advocate, or simply navigate in the ways that I would if I was feeling completely solidified and comfortable within my own being. And I think I'll put it this way. I can't answer your question, but what I can say is I'm going through it, and I know I'm gonna get through it.
Great, well said. Yeah, I mean, you deal and you tackle a lot of stuff. On a lighter note, your music fucking rocks.
Thanks, bro.
A lot of joy to a lot of people.
Thank you.
Our buddy who recommended you can't speak highly enough about you guys, and I think that's what's so cool about your message is that you have a first off you have a message. You got your whole point is not to just like drink as much as you can at a bar and like and just keep on playing shows.
I feel like there's enough folks doing that. I don't want to oversaturate the market like that.
There you go. Yeah, so you're like, why don't I actually find some message first and bring the party.
Mhm.
It's such a cool thing, and I think it also just shows because you talked about dealing with different backgrounds. You know, you're multiple. Being Jewish, being black, growing up in a way that you always felt isolated. So it's like you're doing what's really hard for people is separate like rock and roll from just partying and drinking all the time and just trying to get girls, like which is historically in the U.S. that's what people think it is, but it first and foremost was about bringing people together, and that is what it's about, and it's an incredible message, and you're very, very thoughtful, and I would have to say you are a better person than most, Cameron, and it's really inspiring to hear somebody like you doing all the things that you do. So
Thank you so much, man. That means the world, bro. Thank you.
absolutely, and yeah, can't thank you enough for being on the show, but kind of just a few things to wrap it up. I everybody should go listen to Big Thank. We didn't even really get into Afro Thunder, but the thing is I have so many more questions for you, but next time I want to do this podcast in this room when you guys are in New York City. We will help you get we will help you get you guys out here. We will do everything we can.
Let's do it. The last time we were there, I played an acoustic set with my dad at the Rockwood Music Hall in the downstairs.
Oh yeah, I played there too. But I think that place is going away, but it's a funny place that allows everybody to just show their stuff. But yeah, absolutely. Is there what else? What do you have to say to your fans out there? People who are hearing you for the first time, who have not yet heard your music. What do you to anybody listening out there?
Well, what I think the first thing I would like to say is drink some water and try to remind everybody, regardless if it is production staff or just my friends, drink some water. Remember that you are not alone. Remember that your existence is important. Remember to make time for your joy. Remember to be authentic in the shit that you enjoy and the shit that brings you life. If King Youngblood is one of those things, fuck yeah. And if not, I hope only good things come your way for good people. Yeah, if folks want to learn more about King Youngblood or anything that we're doing, folks can go to kingyoungblood.com or just follow us on Instagram, Spotify. You know how the internet works. You're a smart individual. You found this podcast. But I think if I had any kind of main message for folks, it's just remember it's okay. It's okay.
I think this was a really important episode.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, this was really great, and we're gonna be in contact. And yeah, this is great. I'm very happy for you.
Right.
I can't wait to see what you guys do with the rest of the year and the rest of your career. And good luck with everything. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Absolutely. I can't wait to come up and rip New York with you, bro.
Oh yeah, let's do it. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and till next time. You have a great night. Thank you so much.
Peace.
You're fantastic, man. Best of luck to you with everything. We're rooting for you.
Thank you so much, you guys. And just real talk. Thank you not just for the conversation, but for the understanding. It really goes a long way. And I think that it's always a very powerful thing when authentic people get a chance to meet each other. So really, thank you guys for the time. It means the world.
This was a pleasure. This was a highlight of the year so far. It's just good.
Oh, stop it. It's only January. You got plenty of time for shit to go right.
Hey, for the love of God, please subscribe to our Patreon for like $1 a month. That would help out a lot. Podcasts are, fun fact, really expensive to run, and I really enjoy doing this. So if you want to keep on seeing stuff like this, help me out. Also, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I really hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.